Good morning. So this thing comes across my Facebook page the other day. It's kind of advertising a series of videos. I guess done by an archaeologist. Looks like a young man, but I presume a believer because he speaks of the Apostle Paul as the Apostle Paul. May not be. I don't know. I didn't get too far into it, but the title of it caught me. Nobody liked Paul is the title of it. And then what little I did look at, I think the first episode is free on YouTube or something, but what little I did look at is some mention of the worldly authorities and everything, and the culture of the time and how Paul was so upsetting, and to the religious system, I suppose, also. And, I don't know if he gets into the place where not many believers probably liked Paul either. Having things to say about him. And he was aware of them. Praise God, Oh, his words are weighty, but his physical presence is weak, So, yeah, he writes pretty good, but his speaking kind of stinks, whatever. He's got probably problems with his eyes. But it caught me, and nobody liked Paul. And I thought, yeah, nobody liked Paul. Nobody much likes Paul either. Now, that's rather bold, of course, to say, and maybe even a little pugnacious in its intent or motive, God knows. But Paul, who is frequently touted and quoted and preached and spoken of from thousands and millions of pulpits, is frequently parsed. Frequently parsed. Yeah. Says a lot of things that don't seem to be mentioned too often, if at all. And I won't go into that and those things, because anytime we have some kind of revelation of certain matters, even of certain estates of men, even believing men, in regards to the truth and the Lord Jesus and what he speaks, even through his messengers. If we have some, we can surely get blown up in that, inflated, self-inflated, think always in terms of those matters, even speaking now like nobody liked Paul, that, focus on that. That's just silly. But the truth of it is hard to deny, just as even if you deny the truth of Paul's words, you find yourself not contending with Paul, but with God. You see, Paul got out of the way. Paul got out of the way. As much as God gave him grace to get out of the way, he was in the way of Christ. And in the way of Christ, he got out of the way. So it's not Paul you're dealing with, it's God you're dealing with. Paul kind of got out of the way. And you'll find, if you find, that that's the way of God of dealing with you, getting you out of the way, so that men are not dealing with you. They may think they're dealing with you or whatever, but when that attitude is pressed upon you, that it is more expedient that I go, more expedient for you that I go, get out of the way, so that you can deal with God, each man. And I'm not speaking of myself, getting out of the way so any man can, but that we each come to that place where, if we are, by the grace of God, given any sort of thing to speak of the Lord, and to take it to the extreme, let's call it ministry. So if we have been given any ministry, we find there is a striving to be effective in it, a striving to get over that which the Lord has imparted to us. And there is often some frustration in that, and often some prayerful seeking of how this is to be accomplished, but it's always accomplished the same way. Get out of the way. If it's the truth, it stands. If you've seen the truth, share the truth, and get out of the way. Now, men may want to deal with you about it and think that you are the one who needs to be dealt with about it. Well, that's fine. But that which has to deal with after the flesh, after the flesh. until they find out that that dealing after the flesh is not going to work with God if you're out of the way. So, I was kind of pleased to see that. Nobody liked Paul. And you can see it, right? As I've said many times and repeat often, consider the humility of Paul, right? If we can. Especially in regards to the Corinthians and that matter of, I am of Paul, I am Cephas, I am of Apollos. One even says, I am of Christ. That's something to beware of too, that the one who makes, that bold claim as though he takes his stand on that in opposition. There can also be a pride, like many of you have heard, I'm sure, me speak. If you've heard anything, I'm not saying many of you, but if anybody's heard, I'm not reluctant to mention denominations, those things that take a name to denominate, nominate meaning, a name, to take a name. But, to be non-denominational can inflate you with pride just as much. Well, I'm non-denominational. It's similar to saying, well, I'm of Christ, So in that section there, when the man says, I'm of Christ, he's in no better stead, I don't think. If he's making a boast of it, no, he's not. Well, you can say you're of Paul, you can say you're of Apollos, you can say you're of Cephas, but I'm of Christ. Yeah, all baloney. So in that, Paul had said, and I said I've mentioned this many times, the humility of Paul. Paul the great, so to speak, apostle. Paul the great apostle. So the Lord worked a lot through him, showed him a lot of stuff, if you believe it. And if you've come to see it, oh my goodness, the depth of this. It's a lot deeper than I thought. So you kind of can be amazed, at what God can show a man and will, according to his mercy and grace, and appointment, election. So Paul says, so who is Paul, who is Cephas? Not anything. One plants, one waters, but it's God that gives the increase. So he who plants and he who waters are not anything. Now that's easy enough to see the humility of Paul in, right? Look, Paul is saying he's not anything. But suppose you're Cephas and Apollos now. Wait. It's okay, Paul, you can say you're not anything. But what about, you're a little overstepping there when you're saying me and Apollos are nothing. This would be Peter speaking, right? But Paul wasn't afraid to say it or ashamed to say it. He went ahead and said it. So Peter, he's nothing, not anything. Apollos, not anything. So see, that same humility that caused him to enter that place of knowing himself as nothing also worked to keep him from being deceived by the stature of any man in the natural. And what he received in that, God knows, and God shares. And may we apprehend the things that Paul was talking about, though we may casually think we know him pretty well, we see him pretty well, we understand him pretty well, we can sit in our study and do little back and forth with Strong's Concordance and really get down what each word means. But the things that Paul wrote from jail are contextual. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're contextual. People that love to talk about context is king. Yeah, when these things are written from the place of imprisonment, it's a little different than from reading in the place of a comfortable study lined with books and a cup of coffee. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean God can't do it. God forbid. This can be my pride. You have to hear it. This can be my pride. And I assure you, I have no shortage of resource in that area to which I might resort. But you come to understand the context is not only the context of the passage, but the context of the man writing. You see, Jesus, when he speaks, it's not merely the things he speaks about, it is the who that is speaking of such things. So the who that is telling us to turn the other cheek, when we come to appreciate Man, he never has to turn the other cheek. He's under no obligation to turn the other cheek. He even is in all authority to do away with the one that might first smite him on the first cheek if he cared to. Then things begin to take on a little bit different light. So, to those of you who have endured and are enduring despite despising, shaming, being called wackadoodle, for being too far out there. And it's not that a man cannot get too far out there. But it's not only that the revelation can lead a man out there, the resistance and the expressed shame of one can also have some impetus to push. That man is pretty clever, abetted by a very clever enemy, to know how to maneuver. And we can be maneuvered into thinking, well, just because everybody doesn't like me, therefore, And that takes the Lord to deal with, And we get into that pity party that Elijah understood. Even I am the only one left. I'm the only one who understands. I'm the only one who's seen. I'm the only one who knows. I'm the only one who hasn't bowed the knee to Baal. And God is able to show. So I'm convinced. I know. I mean, I've met others, so I know I'm not alone there. It's not even like I'm speaking from a place of aloneness. But to those I don't know who are out there, finding this labor in themselves to shuck off any pride, any consideration that anything they have they've come up with, anything they have they've achieved, anything they have or done even, they can look back with any admiration upon, that it's always been the Lord. Even when they were in the deepest, darkest sin, it's always been the mercy of God preserving them. So to those of you who are enduring this, that nobody likes, bless you. You may be in very good company. Because just as nobody liked Paul, there's a man who said, "And ye shall be hated by all men for my name's sake. And if they have done these things to me, they will do them to you." So be well, be encouraged, be comforted, be strengthened. Pray for your brethren throughout the world, knowing that they are enduring the same sufferings. And be clothed by the grace of God with Jesus Christ. Be well.